Afternoon. Let the record show we have a quorum. I'd like to reconvene the public accounts meeting, and this afternoon we're going to be dealing with the PwC report on the fire department, and we have coming in as a witness the chief fire officer. So if the sergeant could bring him in now, I would appreciate it. You might have to go look, he might be there.
Swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give to this Honourable Legislative Assembly shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. David Halls, and they want to thank you for finding time in your busy schedule to come down here to answer a few questions for us. When you ask the first question, it's just for purposes of the record. State your full name and the position that you occupy.
David Hales, Chief Fire Officer.
Okay. Very good. Okay, Chris, your turn.
Thank you, Fire Chief Hales, for coming this afternoon. As you may be aware, this committee is currently looking at the use of consultant reports that have been going between the period, what was the period again? Yeah, to 2017. However, so we've been looking at the use of consultants. However, in the public's interest, we noticed that there was one consultant report that was made public, which in this case was a PwC report, and even though it is outside that time period, we believe that it would have probably been in the public's best interest to also take a look at that consultant report. So in the vein of this, where we are, because next week I believe we have other chief officers coming in to discuss the use of consultants, so this is not something that's new. But like I said before, this is one of the things that members on both sides were basically, the issue was raised, and as such we just decided to pull this one a little bit forward as opposed to leaving it out there for too long and the public having the incorrect observation, or the incorrect conclusion, sorry. I'm assuming that you have seen this report?
That's correct, sir, yes.
Okay, perfect, that's good. So we're not, even though I think we have you scheduled for an hour and a half or something like that, I don't expect it would really last that long. But for us, we just wanted to make sure, at least from the public standpoint, that there's some confidence going forward, and this is not something that's just outstanding. At the same time also, we do, this Legislative Assembly approve a substantial amount of money each year to the fire service. So also we just wanted to make sure that that money is being spent in accordance with the value for money and everything else that this committee would be concerned with. So that's pretty much what it is that we're looking for. I want to also use this opportunity to thank you and your team for the work that you guys have been doing. And again, this is something more for informational purposes. I know people have a view of the Public Accounts Committee sometimes, so I just wanted to set your mind at ease there.
Okay.
I think the role that you and your team plays is important, one, within our country. Many times when many people are asleep at nights, you guys are the ones up that are manning the country, making sure everything is running smoothly. And at the same time, you guys are the ones that are running into buildings when other people are running out. And that is one of the things that I think this committee is also aware of. I think, just on a side note, the service that you guys provide to the country is invaluable. And I hope even at the end of this session, we can at least agree that we need to do something even about the life insurance for fire officers. Because that's one of the things that I am concerned about, but that is something that we can raise with the chief officers separately, because they also have families and everything else. So it is within that vein that we're just trying to get a few little things answered, and just to make sure that the fire service is providing the value for money that we would expect from any other government department. Okay. With that said, one of the things that jumped out at me looking at the executive summary from the PwC report is where it says that, you know, fire officers are passionate about the service they provide, many stating they would go above and beyond where necessary. This was confirmed by the positive citation among many of the external stakeholders. So I think that in itself says bode well in terms of for the public to know that we do have fire officers that are passionate about what it is that they do. So that does help, and I think it confirms the view that many people may have. However, it says the current chief fire officer is not supported by a permanent senior management team. 5 out of the 6 are acting officers. In terms of going through the public service management law, in terms of vacancies and everything else, could you, and this is where the question kicks in now, would you be able to give the committee an update in terms of where you are in terms of filling those positions? Because, I mean, having 5 of 6 senior officers acting would basically put a strain on any organization. So can you just kind of give us a brief update in terms of where you are in terms of probably filling some of those positions? Have any of them been filled since this report, or are you close to filling any of them?
Can I just start off by saying that I wasn't aware that I was going to be questioned on this report this afternoon, so I haven't done any background studying on this report in detail. I'm aware of it, and we're acting upon it, but I wasn't aware that I was going to be asked questions on this report this afternoon. Okay, so your question was about the acting ranks and the promotions going forward. Yes, we're engaged in numerous things there. The job descriptions are being looked at this time, which is a very important component to taking these positions forward. The job descriptions need to be put in place and ratified by POCs before we can go to the next steps for recruiting those positions on a full-time basis.
Thank you very much. And I mean, roughly, in terms of training and development, which is one of the biggest items that this assembly had voted on in terms of spend, do you have sufficient budget in terms of training and development in the event that if you find someone who's willing but not yet quite able, that you have sufficient resources? Because ultimately, if it's a situation where the resources are inadequate, then this is something that we would expect to come back before this assembly for us to, if needs be, probably vote to increase budget or whatever. So in that situation, in terms of getting those positions filled, would you say that you have sufficient resources for the training and development if you do find potential people but we're not quite there as yet?
We actually got a very healthy training budget this year, over $300,000, and that is being spent at this time on various training opportunities for quite a lot of the personnel within the service. One of the things we're looking at is once the job descriptions come out, they're going to be linked to the UK National Occupational Standards for Fire Service, and from those reports, from those job descriptions, we will be able to ascertain which courses are required for personnel who are promoted in the future. Obviously that budget we received this year will go a long way to actually giving us the opportunity to put those personnel in those positions and give them the correct training to carry out those roles.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Just quickly, and just from my own understanding, I noticed you said that you had used the UK standards. Now, in the past, I know many fire officers used to get training within the US. Is it a situation now that we're going to just one standard, or we'll continue to use both US and UK standards?
The training which is carried out in the US will continue. I think we've actually got personnel there, if not this week, next week, carrying out training in the US, so that won't change. One of the good factors about the National Occupational Standards is they are quite open as to how you achieve your aims. So it's a document which gives you the opportunity as an organisation to create your own training and advancement for personnel, and provided you meet the requirements of the document, there is no stipulation within the document as to how you achieve that.
Okay, but just to confirm then, so officers who would previously would have had US certification would not be disadvantaged under this new process? No,
sir. As I said, we've actually got personnel either just come back from the US or go in there very shortly, and the courses they're on can link directly into the National Occupational Standards.
Okay.
You see, you have you're getting help from the civil service, POCs or something, on your job descriptions. Are they providing you with a list of competencies to match the job description?
No, sir. We've provided the list of competencies.
So they're writing job description based on a predetermined list of competencies?
POCs isn't actually writing the job descriptions. The POCs actually ratify the job descriptions after they've been written.
Mr. Chair, I believe he's referring to they actually evaluate the job description.
That's correct, sir.
Yeah, so they don't actually do the preparing of the job description. They evaluate it for where it should be placed in the government's grades.
For salary?
For salary,
okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Who is doing these job descriptions at the present moment?
At the present moment, the job descriptions are being carried out by PwC.
Mr. Chairman, through you, sir. Your contract called for you to succession plan, job descriptions, and organizational charts. Am I right or am I wrong, sir?
That's correct, sir, yes.
So, Mr. Chairman, through you, this PwC report cost us, I think, $88,000. In his contract, he was the one supposed to do these. Now, can I also ask if the PwC is also doing the succession plan, or is there a succession plan not in place yet?
So the succession planning is taking place at this time.
Taking place?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, taking place. Okay, Mr. Chairman. And the organizational chart, who's doing that?
The final, as with all of these documents, the job descriptions and the organizational chart will have to be ratified by myself before they are passed into the fire service organization.
No, I never asked you that, sir. I asked you who's doing them. Because in your contract, it said that you were to do it, but you've already made it clear that the job descriptions are being done by PwC, which will cost us more money, the public's money again, which you were supposed to do according to your contract. So the organizational chart, is it right to say that PwC is doing that as well?
PwC have suggested an organizational chart, which will be looked at, and it will be decided whether that organizational chart will be implemented.
Once again, who's doing the organizational chart?
Within the PwC report, there was an organizational chart attached to that report.
So PwC did that as well. Okay, so there's two things on your contract. Okay. The succession plan, is there a succession plan in place? Yes or no, sir?
There is succession planning going on at this time, and once the job descriptions have been finalized, then a total succession plan will be implemented after that.
Taking almost 2 years. Okay, sir. Through you, Mr. Chairman, going again to the PwC report. You keep referring to NOS, the UK branch, UK standard. What standard were we using before?
Are you talking about aviation or domestic, sir?
Let's go domestic.
Domestic, we're not qualified to any standards.
And aviation?
Qualified to CAP 699, which is Civil Aviation Publication 699, which is taken directly from the National Occupational Standards.
He's on the oath, right? Okay. You're saying that what we have in place now was taking, the CAP 99 was taken from the NOS.
That's correct, sir. The aviation version, it's basically an aviation version of the National Occupational Standards, but it's linked directly to the National Occupational Standards.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead. I got another question. I got to dig up. Go ahead.
I want to get back a little bit to the job description that PwC is being done for you. It bothers me that you seem to have the cart before the horse, unless I misunderstood you, in that you identify the competencies first and you're doing a job description based on the competencies. Did I understand you correct?
Yeah, the competencies have been linked directly to the National Occupational Standards,
okay,
and they'll be incorporated into the job descriptions, so yes.
But the normal process that I am familiar with is that you have a function to perform for which you do a job description, and then you decide what competencies are necessary to perform that function. You don't have competencies to which you write a job description.
I'm not actually writing the job descriptions at this time, and I haven't seen them yet, so I can't really comment upon the contents of the job description until I see them, sir.
At what?
He just said that he's writing them, but when I questioned him, he said PwC.
He hasn't seen them yet. My other concern is in terms of existing staff. Once the job description is done and the competences are identified by PwC, is PwC then going to do a gap analysis to determine what competencies existing staff do not have for that job description and that list of competencies? And then how do we get those competencies made up for existing staff? What process is that going to follow?
I'm not 100% sure, sir, because the PwC report has been commissioned by the ministry, so I'm just acting upon what is being published in that report and what I'm being told at this time.
So the ministry is actually driving the reorganization of your department in terms of identifying from the organizational chart, which was part of the consultancy, the job description, the competencies, and I would assume the gap analysis. So in that case, then I guess we're asking the wrong person the questions. If you're saying that the ministry is making that determination.
What I'm saying, sir, is that the ministry actually commissioned the PwC consultancy, not the fire service.
But how will the recommendations, if that is part of the consultancy, be implemented under the supervision of the ministry or under your supervision as Chief Fire Officer?
I find it difficult to answer that question, sir, because, as I said, the ministry commissioned the report, So I can't really answer that question because it's their report and they're making the decisions on it.
Okay, but we have the chief officer coming next week, so we're just trying to find out, because that's concerning. Because if you're the chief fire officer, I would like to suggest that the expertise and to know what kind of jobs you need and what the competencies for those jobs to meet the NOS requirement is going to be rest with you and the fire service and not with the ministry.
That's correct, sir. The fire service actually developed the competency roadmap for the NOS.
Okay, but you're confusing me now. Because if you're developing the competencies, and assuming, by competencies I'm assuming based on your knowledge and what the prescription qualifications and competencies are for different levels in the NOS. And I'm guessing here because I don't know anything about the fire service, right?
That's correct, sir, yes.
And then the ministry above your level has commissioned a report from an accounting and consulting firm to write an organizational chart for you and to write job descriptions and identify the competencies. That's what I understand that you're saying.
No, sir. The competencies have been provided by myself to the ministry.
Okay. Well, who is placing what competency with what job description?
The competency levels have been carried out by the fire service. I can't answer that question yet, sir, because I haven't seen the job descriptions yet.
Okay. Well, okay. In your professional judgment, the gap, the missing component from the fire service in terms of progression and succession, is it on the administrative managerial competency side, or is it on the fire extension, prevention, so NOS competency side? Where is the shortfall?
I think, sir, that the shortfall has been that there's been no promotion into slots that have been held vacant for a very long time, and some personnel at the level they're at, the jumps that are going to have to be made into these higher positions are quite high, and we're going to have a look at the competencies of those personnel at this time and identify a skills gap, and then look at ways to provide training, experience and exposure to actually fill those gaps.
Any guesstimate on time frame to make that, to fill in those gaps?
2 or 3 years.
Once we've seen the job descriptions and we've had a good look at them and ratified them, then we'll be at more of a place to carry that out. But in the meantime, we're not sitting our laurels on this. We're taking this forward as quickly as possible. There are certain timelines which have been issued, and we're going to start training next week, actually, or very shortly. Each person who is in a position for promotion is going to be given one-to-one mentoring and training very shortly as to various things, but prospects for promotion is one of the main things that we're going to be looking at.
And that's all going to be done in-house?
That's going to be done in-house and with consultants as well.
From your experience level, what do you regard as most important for the top 4 positions? Managerial and administrative competencies, or fire technical competencies?
I certainly think that you can't get away from the fire technical experience and competencies, because if you get a large incident, then these personnel are going to be the strategic commanders of the incidents, and they're going to be responsible for actions taken at those incidents.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir. The fire service, were we already not trained to NFPA standards when you arrived?
The training, what are you sorry, sir, are you talking about recruit training or general training?
General training, NFP standard.
No, sir, there's no, I believe that there's nobody in the fire service trained to NFPA 1001, firefighter 1, firefighter 2. They might be trained to, from a book that refers to that, but they've got no professional qualifications through the NFPA.
Okay. In the PwC consultancy, what part did you play in this? What part did you play in the review process?
In the actual review process itself, sir, the review was carried out by PwC.
Yes, sir. And what part did you play in that?
And they, if I can just explain, they went to various locations and spoke to numerous personnel within the fire service.
Okay, sir. One second there.
Sorry.
Okay, just hold that thought. I want you to continue on.
Okay.
You said they went to various places and spoke to various personnel.
Mm-hmm.
Who picked the people for them to speak to? The people that they went and spoke to, who handpicked these people? Well, go and speak to Tom, go speak to Mary, go speak to Jean. Who handpicked those people? Who sent them to these people?
I think, going back, sir, I think it was carried out by PwC.
Correct, we know that. But PwC were given instructions. Who selected the people for PwC to speak to?
I don't recall, sir.
You don't recall. Good answer. Continue, sir.
Oh, yes. I was just saying that the personnel from PwC went to various locations, spoke to various personnel, and we weren't involved in that process. Fire service wasn't involved in that process.
Okay, sir. At one stage, the Deputy Governor stated on radio that the fire officers told him that no firefighters within the service are qualified to fill your post. Are you in agreement with his statement?
Sorry, sir, can you repeat the question, please?
The Deputy Governor went on the radio and said that fire officers told him that no firefighters within the service are qualified to fill the chief fire officer's role. Do you agree with him?
At this current time, I would say yes, sir.
Okay. Based on the PwC report process, several officers were interviewed and asked if persons within the service were qualified to fill the vacant senior roles, and a list of names of officers were presented and recorded during the process. Can you explain why this information was not documented and made known to the public in the final report?
Sir, I had no control over the report whatsoever. That was issued by PwC.
Oh, because it's strange that I read that in the report, yet I have personally spoken to a few officers who said they made recommendations and gave names, but yet in the PwC report it does not come out. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
The rest of my questions relate to things that you said the ministry is doing, which I must tell you gives me some serious concerns from my managerial and administrative background. But we will have I'll reserve those for the chief officer next week. So if
in our fire law, Is the NFPA standards, is that what's in our fire law?
There is a. We can refer to NFPA when we carry out fire prevention, the fire prevention role, sir. Yes, but it's not a direct link. There are rules and regulations, fire codes, which we use for fire prevention, and we can refer to the NFPA under some circumstances.
You said you were given a healthy training budget. When you keep all of a sudden coming to the NOS and going away from the NFPA, all of the previous professional training that our fire service has had, all of the good firemen that we have, because they just couldn't turn bad overnight. We know we've had bad heads of the fire department. That's a proven fact. No one wants to say it. But will all of a sudden all those qualifications be null and void because they have to do NOS?
As I said, sir, there are no NFPA qualifications for firefighters.
So all the training, the previous training that the firemen have gone on or whatever, and courses that they've taken, they're null and void now, or they have to do everything over again to be qualified?
Not at all, sir. As I said earlier, we're actually still sending personnel to the States for training, and that will continue.
Is everybody be given a fair shake or just a hand-picked few?
We are going through a training schedule at the moment, and we're attempting to get as many personnel as possible on that training.
I think you said earlier that if you do the American-based training, it can be transferred to the NOS.
That's correct, sir,
because
yes.
I think some of our concerns would be that we don't want to introduce a new standard to which the current firefighters, of no fault of their own, because most of them didn't select where to go to get the training, that training will not be transferable. And how are the levels equate? I mean, I don't know enough about it to probably even ask you, but when you're talking about NOS, that is the British National...
It's the UK Fire and Rescue Service National Occupational Standards.
National Occupational Standards. How does that equate to a similar standard in the US to which it appears most of our fire officers may have been trained and are still being trained?
Yes, sir. As I said, the National Occupational Standards are a list of competency-based training, being practical and theoretical, but they don't give strict guidelines as to how that training is achieved. So what that means is the organisation itself can assess the training needs and carry out that training and then directly link that into the National Occupational Standards for competency.
So the National Occupational Standards do not require specific testing based on specific training. You can say, well, the person received X hours of training in water or CO2 and make the recommendation, and that's accepted by the NOS standards.
Yes, sir. It's all about demonstrating competency through practical demonstration and theoretical knowledge. If you can demonstrate that, then the assessor will sign you off as being competent in that particular section of the National Occupational Standards.
Right, and if I recall from your experience and in the UK, you would be in a position to make that assessment and sign it off as an NOS performance, or would we have to bring in somebody else to do that?
I am qualified to do that, sir, yes, but I'm a very busy person and I'd like to get other people to do that within the organisation. So we've got the station managers in charge of each crew, and we've got the divisional officers who we will get qualified as assessors, and then they will be able to assess the performance of individuals and be able to sign them off as being competent.
Okay.
Fire Chief Hills, I would very much like to thank you for coming here today. One of the things that this committee is primarily looking at, I mean, we basically spend millions of dollars a year, the fire service, and just like with any other department, we just like to make sure that what they're required to do by law in terms of what they're also, and in terms of serving the public is being done. We do also recognize that under the Public Service Management Law that a lot of the responsibilities are actually vested within the chief officer itself. And while you may be responsible for a lot of the day-to-day type operation, a lot of the strategic and other issues that we'd be probably more interested in is something that should be directed to the chief officer. With that said, from speaking to committee members, I think the majority of the questions that we would have relating to the PwC report should be directed to the chief officer. And in that stead, I'd just like to thank you for coming here today. And we will continue next week with this. So, but from that standpoint, I just want to say thanks very much.
Mr. Chairman, I have 2 more questions, sir.
Me.
What's the name of the company that you came from, the company that you were associated with? Sirico?
What? Sorry, can you repeat the
Sirico,
question
is that,
again?
what company is Sirico? Which company is Sirico?
Serco is a worldwide company that provides various various jobs for personnel, and it carries out a lot of contracts with military. It looks after railways. It looks after leisure centres.
What does it have to do with fire services?
Serco has actually got a fire service. It's Serco Fire Service.
Is that where you trained, or did you work there at any time?
Yes, I worked at the International Fire Training Centre, which was run by Serco.
Thank you. And a lot of the people that you're using now to train, the money that's training, the people you're bringing in, are they coming from Sirico?
That's correct, sir, yes.
Okay. Just the NFPA, you do know it is adopted in Chapter 3 of the Fire. Let me see, Chapter 3? Yes, it's in Chapter 3 of the Fire Code.
Of the fire code, sir, yes, I didn't say it wasn't. I says that when we're carrying out fire risk assessments or fire prevention inspections, we will refer to the fire code. If the subject which we're looking at is not covered in the fire code, then we can refer to the NFPA.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A joke.
Okay, Mr. Hales, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
2.5 years, no succession planning.
I'd like to adjourn the meeting, and we'll come back tomorrow. We'll come back on Wednesday next week. Tomorrow is a free day. We'll come back Wednesday next week at 9 o'clock, 9:30 in the morning.